Harrell.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Good morning to you. We're in the home stretch here in the broadcast, and we really appreciate you listening. The website is jihadwatch.org. And the man is Robert Spencer. He's the director of Jihad Watch. He has led seminars on Islam and jihad for the FBI, the United States Central Command, the United States Army Command, and General Staff College, the U.S. Army's Asymmetric Warfare Group, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, the Justice Department's Anti-Terrorism Advocacy Council, and the U.S. intelligence community. Robert Spencer joins us now. Robert, welcome to the program, sir.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Now, you're also the author of the new book, The History of Jihad, From Muhammad to ISIS. What can you tell us about that?
This is the first and only one-volume treatment in the English language of the entire history of jihad activity, violence by Muslims in order to impose Islamic law around the world, starting in the 7th century and going right up to today. Of course, this is the motivation behind the terror threat that we face around the world today, and it's what was behind 9/11, what was behind the Boston Marathon bombing, and many, many other things. And I show in the book that this is something that is a war that is 1,400 years old, is still being fought, has constantly been fought around the world. This is the first time the whole story of it has been told.
We got it up on the screen there for our online audience, The History of Jihad. You can get it on Amazon right there, folks. You can see it if this is something you're interested in. Robert, it's fascinating to me, as you know, I guess I was in high school on September the 11th, 2001, and I remember that day, very vividly. But this was kind of, I never knew anything about what was going on in the Middle East, never knew anything about it. And, it came to my country, it hit us home, and then, to see the transition from what happened in the Bush administration to the Obama administration. First of all, I just have to say it kind of shows the tolerance of this country. If you'd have told people on September 12th, 2001 that, 7 years later we're going to elect a man named Barack Hussein Obama, people would have said, no, there's no way. And yet, here we are. We did. But then they started stripping things out of the FBI in their manuals in any reference to what you call jihad. Isn't that correct?
That's right. And I show this in the book that after 9/11, Bush started it really when he went into a mosque 6 days after the attack and said that Islam was a religion of peace, while standing there with a man who is now in prison for financing Al-Qaeda and another who is the head of a Hamas and Muslim Brotherhood front. And Obama made it even worse by, as you say, he did in 2011, he forbade any mention of Islam and jihad in connection with terrorism. People find this really hard to believe, but it's 100% true. If you were to join the FBI today and go in, say you wanted to study counterterrorism, they would tell you all about so-called right-wing extremists, but they wouldn't tell you a thing about Islamic jihadis. As far as the FBI and the other intelligence agencies are concerned, there is no jihad threat, and this has not yet changed, although President Trump, of course, has been very clear that he wants it changed. It has not yet been changed in the Trump administration.
I find that very frightening that we have the civilian leader of the executive branch and these agencies that are supposed to be in the executive branch are not very responsive to the President of the United States. That's very concerning to me. Is it concerning to you?
Yes, it is. And this is really the first time this has happened in American history. I think that we all assumed that on January 20th, 2017, the new president would start implementing his program, and the people in the various government agencies would implement that program willingly. And this is the first time that we have seen what is really a large-scale revolt on the part of these agencies in refusing to implement the president's program and clinging to the programs of his predecessor. And this is something that's got to stop, because it's a grave threat to our entire republic, our electoral system. I mean, why even bother throwing somebody out and bringing somebody else in if the people who actually implement the policies aren't going to change anything?
That's exactly right. And we were actually talking about this last hour just on the border wall funding and how the American people voted for President Trump. One of the key things he said he was going to do was build the wall, and now we have members of the Republican Party saying they're not going to include it in the funding. So it's kind of along the same lines.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. It's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We are building a liberty machine. We want you to be a part of that. One of the ways you can do it is to call or text 870-275-9799. You may also sound off on Facebook. The phone number, the website there, facebook.com/Conduit News. That's facebook.com/Conduit News. We really appreciate it. All right, so we've got a lot of news to get to today. We have, let's first talk about this. Well, let me just kind of go down the list of what we're going to do first, shall we? So we've got some national news, got some gun stories. Jeff Sessions was in Arkansas yesterday. We definitely want to talk about that. Also want to talk about an effort to get on the ballot to collect signatures to redo how we do the redistricting across the state of Arkansas after the census every 10 years. Definitely want to talk about that. Also want to talk about how the governor and the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, they are in what appears to be a bidding war with Kimberly-Clark jobs. They don't want the Kimberly-Clark jobs to leave Conway. It seems to me like this is on the reverse side. You have Kimberly-Clark trying to extort the state of Arkansas or the taxpayer. It's like, which one's going to happen? We may need a little bit more money to sweeten the deal if you want us to stay here. Again, the flaws and the pitfalls of economic development, at least their philosophy, economic development on display. We'll talk more about that. Also, there's a Arkansas Economic Development magazine that's out that is propaganda. I mean, it really is propaganda. No wonder we want to do business with the Chinese. We're taking now lessons from their government-controlled media. At the top of the next hour, we will have for you a Conduit for Action quiz. It's up right now at conduitforaction.org, and the topic is, Joe, the topic is corporate welfare payouts. So knowledge is power. We'll be talking about that, taking that quiz. And then at the bottom of the next hour, Mr. David Crow will be with us. David Crow, who is a patriot. He is also associated with the Faulkner County Tea Party. Matter of fact, I want to remind everybody this today at noon at lunch, I'm going to be at Larry's Pizza in Conway from 12 to 1 for the Faulkner County Tea Party lunch. I'm going to be speaking there. So if you guys would like to come out, figure out what the Faulkner County Tea Party is all about, I'm sure most of you know. But in case you have been living under a rock for the last 8 years, you can do that. But I would love to meet you guys. I would love for you to come out, and I'd love for you to, spend your lunch hour with me and hear about what Conduit News is doing. Again, the phone number, 870-275-9799, 870-275-9799. All right. So Jeff Sessions was in Arkansas yesterday. He talked about the Supreme Court case that essentially has made it difficult to keep violent criminals behind bars. And if they can't be kept behind bars and they get released early, what does that do to our society? And what does that, are we safer, if you will? Also on hand was the United States Representative Bruce Westerman, who will be on this program tomorrow at 7:33. So Congressman Westerman was there yesterday because, after Jeff Sessions addressed this, the Supreme Court case, and spoke out, and he talked to law enforcement essentially. Gave a speech to law enforcement. He was at Cody Highland's office, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District, where he gave this speech. Then he went to the Lake Hamilton School District, and he sat down with them because Lake Hamilton has been, from my understanding, according to reports, on the forefront of arming school personnel to try to make schools safer. And this is really interesting. You've also heard Clarksville. I believe Clarksville has done this as well. The Gazette reports that Sessions participated in the discussion at the school district in Garland County as part of Trump's Federal Commission on School Safety. The fundamental duty of the government is to keep its people safe, and that includes our most precious citizens, of course, our children, Sessions said. We want to make sure no child lives in fear, that no parents are in fear for their children at school. Trump knows that to make that happen, we have to listen to the men and women who have committed their lives to achieving that goal. Lake Hamilton Superintendent Steve Anderson said the school district, which includes a combined elementary, middle, and high school campus, is at the forefront of the state's efforts to add more armed security. Anderson said the district's administration and school board took advantage of a little-known law 25 years ago that allowed the district to have uniformed and armed security officers, as well as a small number of administrators who are licensed school security officers allowed to carry weapons or have quick access to them. Quote, "We know we're not the United States Navy SEALs. We know we're not the best law enforcement officers, but by golly, we're a long ways from Barney Fife," end quote. Interesting. I can't wait to talk to Congressman Westerman tomorrow on the program, give some more information about this. Of course, see, here's the thing. Bruce Westerman was on the Lake Hamilton School Board at one time, and so we'll talk about that tomorrow. But Jeff Sessions was in the state. Now, the interesting backdrop on this is Sessions comes to Arkansas yesterday as the president tweets that he should end the Mueller investigation because it's a witch hunt and it's out of control. Of course, this made the liberal media's heads explode. Obstruction of justice, can you believe this? And in the meantime, you have all these, you've got these polls out there that the American people they're so bored. They don't care about this Russia idea. They're over it. They are tired of the media trying to tell them that Donald Trump won the election by colluding with Russia. They're tired of the media trying to tell them that there really isn't a silent majority in this country that said, you know what, enough's enough. We're tired. While you were lecturing us, while Hillary Clinton was lecturing us on in the left on what pronouns to use when referring to fellow citizen, he, she, they, or what is it? What's the other one? I don't know. The LGBTRSTLNE, would you like to buy a Val community? When that's what they were talking about, and yet the rest of the country was like, we would love to have a better economy or better jobs, or we'd love to have a president that doesn't look at small business owners and say that you didn't build your business, somebody else made that happen. That's really what happened, is that the message of the left was rejected. What else was rejected in 2016 was the media, their ego. I mean, good grief, they couldn't imagine. They were living in such a bubble. They thought they had control over the population of the United States, and yet all of their efforts to tell everybody that Donald Trump was evil and Hillary Clinton was good, guess what? The American people said, we disagree, and that is driving the media crazy. So they're doubling down. The media continue to double down over and over and over again, and it's just because they think that they're better than us. They think that they know better how to plan our lives, in collusion. You know who's colluding? It's the media and these social engineers. It looks like it's the media and the deep state that have a huge problem with anybody getting into power who's not going to immediately conform to the status quo. Because the status quo keeps everybody happy and everybody in power, doesn't it? An also interesting thing that happened yesterday, did anybody see Jan Morgan? Did anybody see what happened with Jan Morgan on CNN? And Allison Camerata and this other guy, Brian, what's his face? The Daily Caller has a story about it. A Second Amendment advocate and Las Vegas shooting survivor, got into a fiery debate on CNN Wednesday about the manufacturing of 3D printed firearms. And I'm going to say here, Jan Morgan did a fantastic job. She has this line in there. We're going to listen to it in a minute. She has this line in there where she says, this guy's all about, but before you put the 3D printed guns out on the internet, the president should have called us and asked us how we feel. And, she says, sorry, but this is about a right. It has nothing to do with how you feel. Your feelings are irrelevant. We're talking about a right. And this is a First Amendment issue. This is so a First Amendment issue when you think about being able to publish something. I know that Mike Lee, when he took a look at Senator Chuck Schumer's bill, his bill to try to stop this 3D printing phenomenon, he says at the very beginning of the bill, it talks about making it illegal to publish. And Mike Lee took to the Senate floor and said, I haven't read the whole thing yet because I've just gotten it, but I think we need to be very skeptical, and I'm paraphrasing here, I think we need to be very skeptical of any piece of legislation that says it shall be illegal to publish. Whatever comes after that should make every American's First Amendment radar kind of, perk up a little bit, pay attention. Let's go to Jan Morgan's Facebook page, shall we? She has a post. She says, on CNN Live this morning, 2 against 1, me on the Bill of Rights. Astounding that the criminal defense attorney I debated feels rights should be government-issued privileges based on feelings and fear. I was supposed to be debating the guest, but he was doing so poorly with his emotion-based rants that the anchor took over his side of the debate and used the strategy of talking over me when I said something she didn't want to hear. Oh, and Brian closed by saying, in the next mass shooting, the blood of victims will be on my hands. I was not allowed to respond, but I would have said that the blood of all of the unarmed victims in these gun-free zones is on the hands of the anti-gun radicals who have not learned from history. Let's go ahead and click that video right there. Turn the volume up, Joe, and let's listen. This is the segment with Jan Morgan, Allison Camerata, and this Las Vegas shooting survivor, Brian. Listen to this.
Our decision, but a federal judge has blocked the online posting of blueprints that allow people to make these 3D guns. But this legal fight is not over, and joining me now is Brian Claypool. He's a survivor of the Las Vegas massacre, and Jan Morgan, a Second Amendment advocate and a certified firearms instructor. Thanks to both of you for being here. Brian, look, the Las Vegas massacre was very recent. Obviously, there are still so many physical and emotional wounds from that. What did you think when you heard that it was possible to use your 3D printer and create an untraceable, unregistered gun?
Utter shock. I was in despair. I was grieving again. I was re-victimized and re-traumatized. I spoke to your colleague Chris Cuomo shortly after the shooting in Vegas, and I told him, I said, during that shooting, the first round of shots, pop, 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 I thought I was dead. Second round of shots, I said, if I survive, I'm going to fight and make sure this never happens again. Now, instead of just fighting to eliminate assault weapons, now I have to fight on behalf of people across the country, victims of gun violence, people who care about public safety. I now have to fight to stop a company from providing a blueprint to any lunatic on this planet to go out and kill people. It's a license to kill, and it's a recipe for mass carnage.
Jan, explain from your perspective how this makes sense. How does it make sense to allow people a homemade gun they can make in the privacy of their own home that is untraceable and that you can bring in, that passes through a metal detector into stadiums, onto planes, etc.?
Okay, well, first of all, whether it makes sense or not and how we feel about it, and Brian, I'm sorry about what you had to go through, truly I am, but feelings and whether or not it's fair is not the same thing as a right. Rights are different from government-issued privileges, and this is more than just a Second Amendment. This is a First Amendment right issue. This guy was going to publish the blueprints, and if we're going to start censoring any kind of information out there on the internet that might do irreparable harm, then we're going to have to take off all the websites that are out there that teach you how to make explosive devices and bombs, websites that are doing irreparable harm, such as pornography, websites that teach people how to poison other people. I mean, there's a wealth of information out there that is very dangerous on the internet. So this is a First Amendment issue. On the issue of the firearms, we already, Allison and Brian, It is already against federal law to manufacture a firearm that is undetectable. But
Sure,
where the
but
confusion lies is whether or not it's traceable.
Yeah.
There are.
But listen, but here's, I just want to stop you for a second. You made a lot of points, Jen. Hold on one second. I mean, making it easier. Okay, so making it easier to have one of these guns. You say it's illegal.
More
but
laws.
The blueprints were online. 1,000 people downloaded them.
We got to have more laws.
So there you go.
Actually, it's not easier, Allison. It's not easier.
Making it easier to
It's
get
not
access
easier.
to
In
the
fact,
blueprints.
no.
1,000 people
No,
downloaded
the
it. That's
I
more
could
than
go,
had
I could
it
go
2 weeks
to a
ago.
hardware store and get the pieces, the parts that I need to make a shotgun. I could do that. You don't have to have. In fact, the printable, 3D printable firearms are much more complicated to make than just building your own. And it is not illegal in America to manufacture your own firearm out of metals in your home and not have it registered.
Let me get Brian.
There's,
So Brian,
it is illegal to
hold
make
on,
one
Jen.
that's
You made your point. Got
undetectable
it.
by metal detectors.
Got it. Brian, when you hear her talk about that this is a right, that this is a First Amendment right, what's your response?
That's the problem with our society. First of all, the First
Stop
Amendment
for a
doesn't
second.
give you the
Hang on
right
a
to
second.
break the
When
law.
the question, when you hear her talk about how this is a right, and his answer is, that's the problem with our society. Man, that's a very totalitarian way to start that, to answer that question. Keep going here. This is Jan Morgan debating Brian Claypool, a Las Vegas shooting survivor, on CNN yesterday. Listen.
The federal law currently says that you can't make plastic guns without serial numbers. So you're not protected by the First Amendment. That's the first thing. The second thing is,
you can't
instead of
publish
President Trump
information?
calling the NRA, guess what? Give me a call and give victims across this country a phone call who have dodged bullets from assault weapons and find out how they feel about it before you propagate this recipe for mass disaster. Do you know that on their website they have what's called a BZ-58, Allison? Do you know what that is? It's a 17-inch long gun, 7 pounds. It's going to carry out mass killing.
That's what they're giving the blueprint to?
That's one of the blueprints. And do you know, on top of that these bullets that are in these weapons are made to destroy your body. When they enter your body, they destroy you. So this is not acceptable in a civilized society. And it's not funny.
Stop for a second. Stop. So bullets are made to destroy you. Wow. Big news there on CNN. That bullets are put into guns to do harm to other people, like they can when you're struck by them. Can you believe these bullets? Can you believe this thing called? It's like CNN is educating people that reporting that firearms exist, and it's like news. Okay, keep going. I want to finish this real quick.
What is funny, Brian? Can I answer
bullets.
No,
you
what is funny
bullets.
is your...
No, what's funny is you sit behind your cushy
Thousands and
chair.
thousands of United States veterans have gone into the line of fire to defend liberty, to defend the Bill of Rights. It is not about feelings. It is a Bill of Rights, Brian. And our feelings do not... your feelings are not relevant when it comes to rights.
Jen, listen. Okay, so let's. So I hear what you're saying. You're saying that you don't want to deal with feelings for policy. Okay.
All right.
How about the fact that we do have a mass shooting
I thought
problem
it was
in this
great.
country?
I thought it was
How
great.
will
Go ahead, stop.
policy mass rights.
That part about the feelings and being irrelevant. You want to know what the problem? He says that's the problem with our society, not our rights. The problem is that people don't understand that my freedom ends where your freedom begins. And they want to say it's a public safety issue. And it's really because I think people are so used to the government, guaranteeing them things and expanding what their responsibilities are in their lives that they really, deep down, I think they want government to guarantee that they're always going to exist and be alive, And that's really goes back to a lot of what the liberal philosophy is, that somehow we can perfect mankind. If we just pass enough laws. If we just pass enough laws, we can change the human heart. See, criminals are going to get guns. Criminals are going to get guns. I was just saying yesterday on the program, I'm kind of excited about the 3D printed guns because I think, eventually, as these things come down in price, people are going to tinker around in their garage. And I think there may be some, really neat inventions out of this, specifically firearms. We got to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment. It's like, okay, well, so do we not have the power of the vote, and the consent of the governed is being violated here left and right, and certainly on this concept of radical Islamic terror. Last week or back on the 24th, you had this, or I guess before that, but the Toronto shooting rampage. We have new details. Of course, just like everything else, Robert Spencer, they always are like, this has nothing to do with Islam, nothing to see here. And then, of course, a couple days later, we find out this guy's been to, ISIS websites and things like that. What were your thoughts on the recent shooting in Toronto?
I thought it was more of the pervasive denial that is absolutely blanketing the West in our response to the jihad threat at this point. That, for example, in the last chapter of the book, the one that's about jihad in this century, is called "The West Loses the Will to Live." And part of that loss of the will to live is the unwillingness or inability to name the enemy and to confront.
This is Mother Government. My people. The promised revenue gathering to fund my motherly goals, such as the Arkansas Works, Obamacare, private option has commenced. I have asked my representatives and senators to execute my will concerning new revenues from the tires you use to drive on my roads, the candy and sodas you consume and purchase in my stores, and the digital products you download on my internet. Your sacrifices and tributes, which are owed, display a measure of obedience, but there are still collectible sacrifices I require from the people to increase the work and size of our great government of Arkansas. There are two matters left unresolved. 1. I require a general tribute for all purchases made on my internet. Not just digital products, but all products. My dear children, there are those who would thwart my motherly goals of progress. If you see them, please combat their misguided notions of freedom by using phrases like mom and pop, and tax cheat. 2. I still require more revenue sacrifices concerning your consumption of my gasoline. I require your undying loyalty on the subject. Subjects, in conclusion. More revenue is good. Static revenue is bad. This message was brought to you by your stewards, aristocrats serving Arkansas. Thank you, my children, in advance for your required and expected obedience that keeps society safe and prosperous. And always remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Some murder. Want to remind everybody there's a law and penalty if you murder someone. Just want to remind everybody of that murder is in fact illegal. And yet the law, it being illegal, would you know there are people that still commit murder in spite of there being a law in the books? Isn't that weird? Isn't that strange? Folks, when I come back, I want to tell you just briefly about a bill that President Donald Trump, if it passes the Senate, may very well veto. It has to do with the Music Modernization Act. And it would help Amazon, according to reports. And Trump is not a fan of the Jeff Bezos. He owns the Washington Post, you know. I'll tell you about that. Also, here in Arkansas, Roby Brock has this report that a redistricting ballot initiative cleared to collect signatures. It wouldn't be this year. But it'd be the next cycle, trying to stop the current process. I think it has to do with the fact that now there's a bunch of Republicans involved and no Democrats. So now they want it to go to some independent citizens commission. Yeah, we've heard that one before.
Confront the enemy for what he really is and stands for. And this shooting in Toronto is just another example. The guy's visiting ISIS websites. That's not a rumor. That was reported by the Canadian police. And then the very same Canadian police, even after ISIS also claimed the shooting, said this has nothing to do with jihad or Islam, and it was all about he was mentally ill. And yet, also, police sources in Toronto said that they had never seen such a well-trained marksman, such an experienced and adept shooter. And you got to wonder, how did some mentally ill person who was fighting mental illness all his life become an expert marksman to the degree that he even impresses police officers who are also trained shooters?
That's a very good point. It's all but it's all suppressed. I mean, especially in Canada. Yeah. I mean, I found out about it from, believe it or not, CBS. I couldn't believe but CBS, I think, is willing to report stuff that does not here, domestic here in the United States. It's all suppressed. They can't bring themselves to admit it.
Yes, and things are getting very bad about this. It's as if the leftists claim that Muslims are victims and that they are never anything else but victims, and any discussion that is revolving jihad terrorism is to be forbidden because it further victimizes Muslims. This idea has taken root to such an extent. Here again in Canada, just a few days ago, there was a man who was protesting near the site of the shooting in Toronto and criticizing Islam. And he was standing in front of a fountain, and somebody grabbed him and threw him into the fountain, which could have caused him serious injuries. And the police were standing right there and did nothing, made no arrests, no charges, nothing.
Gosh. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen over in what we're seeing in Europe with the immigration situation there, and also London? I mean, we essentially have, and I don't think, and I know you agree with this, but this is essentially a Western civilization struggle. And in many cases, people on the left are somewhat suicidal. You just mentioned it, losing the will to live. Is there, with the Brexit that's trying to go on and things like that, and London or the UK trying to be more independent, do you think that they'll ever get a handle on this immigration crisis that's, changing their society over there?
I don't think so. It seems as if the political elites are deeply committed to this idea of mass immigration. Just this morning, the Spanish foreign minister was saying, hey, we need new blood, and saying that these people ought to be coming in massive numbers because the native European population is decreasing. And so they're going to get new blood, and a lot of it's going to be spilled on.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so President Trump's no fan of Jeff Bezos. This story jumped out at me. They're trying to. Amazon is lobbying to get Congress, and it passed out of the House. It's called the Music Modernization Act. And it's going through the Senate right now. It would create, by government force, a collective that pays out to various parties. The major problem with said collective is that it would be run by the government, specifically the U.S. Copyright Office, making it prone to cronyism, corruption, and mishandling of intellectual property, Matthew Boyle reports over at Breitbart. The so-called Middle Ground Music Modernization Act will destroy the private sector's progress by creating a federal mechanical license collective which would collect payments and distribute them to the correct parties, according to Brian Crabtree, a pro-Trump author over at Newsmax. Quote, the collective would be funded by a new fee on music services and housed at the U.S. Copyright Office. The bill is a solution in search of a problem, he writes. The creation of the collective threatens to pull the rug out of the marketplace, killing competition and establishing yet another monopoly in the music industry. Likely, the government would select just one or perhaps two services as their policemen on the beat. The most politically astute are the ones that often walk away with the deal, and by no means should anyone consider the Music Modernization Act to be an exception. So the bill passed the House with bipartisan support, and it's in the Senate Judiciary Committee. or it's already made it through the Senate Judiciary Committee. Sources close to the White House who are in regular contact with President Trump and his closest associates say the president has a serious problem with doing anything to help Amazon. Quote, the president was irate when he heard about this bill. He is calling it the Amazon bill. There's no chance he will sign the bill that passed the House. Interesting. Anyway, I just thought it was, first of all, it's another way for the government to, grow and expand its responsibilities. Another way to regulate the market, the free market. And, Donald Trump doesn't support this. I found it interesting. It'd be interesting to see the president veto some stuff and kind of get in a, substantive debate over why it's good or why it's bad. You know what I mean? So be watching for that. Also, not this year, but the next year. It won't be on the 2018 ballot, Roby Brock writes, but you might start seeing activity surrounding a new ballot initiative. People are going to be asking for your signatures. Attorney General Leslie Rutledge has okayed the ballot title on a measure that would alter congressional and legislative redistricting, which happens once every decade. It happens once every 10 years after they conduct the census that's going out. Of course, the left is freaking out because Donald Trump put the citizenship question back on the census. And I think California is really the ones freaking out because if it discourages illegal immigrants from filling out the census because they have to mark whether or not they're a citizen or not. And if that were to happen, and you have less people in the population of California or in some districts isn't really what it's been reported to be, I don't know, maybe California has an extra congressman that they shouldn't have. And that certainly is making people on the left upset. I mean, they believe, the Democrat Party at this point believes, the polling suggests there's a significant portion of the Democrat Party that believes illegal immigrants here in this country should have the right to vote. Now, that is preposterous. That is where the Democrat Party is right now. They have gone off the rails. But essentially what's happened is this is an amendment, proposed amendment. Again, it won't be on the ballot this year, but the next cycle, if they get enough signatures. A guy by the name of Skip Cook with Arkansans for Governmental Reform. And the title is the Arkansas Citizens Redistricting Amendment. There would be a 7-member panel of citizens that would form a commission. It would abolish the state board of apportionment that we currently use. That is, made up of constitutional officers, the governor, the attorney general, the secretary of state, that currently draws the state legislative redistricting lines. So that's what we have now, and now we want this citizens commission. Interesting. I don't know. I've thought about this for a couple of days now because I've read this story. This story's a couple days old. Let's see, when was this thing published? July 26th. Yeah, so I've kind of been mowing this over. I don't know. It may be because now there's a bunch of Republicans in control. That may have something to do with it. When you look at the idea of the governor, secretary of state, attorney general, that sort of thing. But, this idea that independent, I can't stand it when any time government attempts to call something independent, a 7-member citizens redistricting, people are going to try to say that it's independent in some cases, and I know we want to fight gerrymandering, and I know gerrymandering is really frustrating to everybody out there on both sides of the aisle. But, again, we act like, especially on the left, they act like that there's nothing, that there are some things the government can do that are just not political. I've talked about this before, and I, for the most part, reject that. What the government does always has an agenda. And even if you have a citizens commission that is supported by the law, then you're acting as the government too, so you're going to have an agenda. And it's just like, I don't know, win more elections, guys. That's just kind of where I am on this. But anyway, we'll see what happens. Remember the redistricting debacle the last time, 10 years ago, when it was Mike Beebe and they tried to do the Fayetteville finger? Remember that? That was ridiculous. That was ridiculous. Okay. We also have another story here from Talk Business and Politics about how the governor and the Arkansas Economic Development Commission are in competing bids with Wisconsin to save Kimberly-Clark jobs in Conway. Arkansas economic development officials are in near daily contact with Kimberly-Clark, Roby Brock writes, as the state is considering all options to save a Conway manufacturing facility and its 350 jobs. So, basically, the way this has gone down is Kimberly-Clark says it's a 50-50 chance that the plant is going to be closed. And this plant has been located in Arkansas for 50 years, nearly 50 years, and it produces Kimberly-Clark feminine hygiene products. But see, Wisconsin is home to a manufacturing plant that makes similar products to Conway's. It was notified in January it could be closed, and since then, Wisconsin leaders have worked on an economic incentive package that includes a potential $101 million to $117 million in wage incentives, state payments for 15% of factory upgrades, and sales tax waivers on equipment upgrades. The Wisconsin plant employs 600 workers. So Wisconsin is trying to keep their Kimberly-Clark plant. And so Arkansas is trying to do the same, trying to save the plant. Now, from my standpoint, I see it differently. I see that Kimberly-Clark is trying to extort Wisconsin taxpayers or Arkansas taxpayers into giving them more money so that they'll stick around. That's the way I see it. And that's the whole problem with these economic development commissions and this whole philosophy of picking winners and losers, is that eventually that company comes back to you and says, well, if I'm going to stay here, I'm going to need a little special treatment. And what does the state do? Well, the state and the people who are in positions of power who we've elected, they use our tax dollars as leverage. They gamble with our tax dollars specifically, because how do you know if Kimberly-Clark's not going to come back and a year later close the plant anyway? And how do you know that they won't come back and ask for more money a year later anyway? I mean, this is no way to do business. This is not how a business would operate. Now, why do I say that? Well, I say that because the Arkansas Economic Development Commission is a propaganda machine for Asa Hutchinson. And it's just mad. It's maddening. It's so frustrating. It's well, let me show you this. Here's the magazine. We have the magazine, the Economic Development Magazine 2018 Volume 1. Are you seeing this? Do you see this? This is the digital version. It's a photo of Asa. Can you get rid of my face there on the screen so we can just look at this? This is incredible. Look at this. Arkansas Economic Development. It's a profile of Asa, for those of you who can't see, over at the YouTube channel Conduit News or Facebook.com/Conduit News. The state that runs like a business and the CEO who makes it happen. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I mean, the state that runs like a business and the CEO who makes it happen. I mean, my goodness, this is propaganda. This is why Asa does so much business in China, because this is the type of stuff that you would see, published about the leader of the Communist Party over there. The leaders over there, get promoted by the media over there. I mean, this is the Arkansas Economic Development. This is the AEDC. This is, taxpayer dollars that are used to give to companies, and you have this magazine, and I just don't understand this magazine. What is the point of this? And this is on the cover.
If Arkansas was a business, the board of directors would have removed the CEO by now. Just saying. Things are not looking up.
Well, it doesn't It just is. It's uncomfortable to me. I think it should be uncomfortable to anybody, even if you agree with Asa. How is this not propaganda? And by the way, there's a part of this in this magazine that actually reads like a parody that we would have written. It really does. Check it out. Go to page. I think it's on page 37. Type in page 37. Yeah, there it is. Now zoom in on that ad, Joe. Does anybody see this ad? Look at this. They have an ad with a Chinese building, so Asian architecture. China is coming to Arkadelphia. Sun Paper, they have the Sun Paper logo. The Shandong Sun Paper will be constructing a $1.8 billion pulp mill in Arkadelphia, creating 350 jobs and 1,000 indirect jobs. Arkadelphia is located in the heart of Arkansas's timber industry with easy access to Interstate 30. Again, so they'll be using our resources to make communist Chinese companies rich. Now, I wonder, is the factory going to look like that? The headline here is literally, China is coming to Arkadelphia. This is the ad. This is an ad. And there's throughout this magazine, by the way, it's littered with ads from cities and municipalities. It's just like, I remember I was talking with Josh Waters. We did an interview with Josh Waters last year after the 2017 session. And you know what he said? He said, being down there for the first time, one of the things I realized is that one of the biggest lobbying forces is actually government itself. Government, bureaucracies, cities, they're lobbying for themselves. There are special interests in the private sector, but the government lobbyists and lobbying for itself is way more powerful than some of these private sectors. I mean, look at that. I can't believe this. This is like a parody that I would have written. China is coming to Arkadelphia, and then look. I mean, making the. I wonder seriously, is the factory going to look like this? Is it going to? Yeah. So the question is still, why are we doing business with China? I want you to leave this up here for a second. We're doing all of this business with China. We can't get enough. And the question is, and I said this yesterday, but I'm going to say it again. Why would a governor of any state court Chinese businesses to come to their state offering tax incentives when we know that China is a belligerent economic actor seeking to supplant the U.S. as the global economic superpower? We also know that China's modus operandi is to steal as much intellectual property from the U.S. as possible. They cheat on trade deals to float their currency for their benefit, to float World Trade Organization rules, an organization to which they gained membership in 2001 to benefit from their status in the WTO as a developing nation when they invest billions outside their economy. Moreover, we know that their economic moves are a precursor to their military expeditionary desires to position themselves as the military superpower on the planet. How is it good for us to invite them into our country? How is this a good thing? It's an honest question I think the governor should answer at this point. And yet we've got 4 Chinese companies that are saying that they're going to come into Arkansas. It's just very strange, considering we're in a trade war with them right now, considering what they're doing in the South China Sea. When you look at the size of, like I've made the comparison, what if we were doing this with Russian companies? Oh, everybody would be up in arms. How dare you? But Russia's economy is small. I mean, it's like the size of California compared to China's. We should be way more outraged about China than we should Russia. They're way more of a threat, economically, militarily, and that sort of thing. Well, militarily, maybe that's debatable, but certainly their expansion and that sort of thing. And the fact that they are stealing our intellectual property. They're coming here. And the FBI and the CIA have been looking into what they're doing in all 50 states. Go to this article. These come out daily, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to realize this. They come out daily. I'm not necessarily searching for them. Top U.S. general warns China pulling ahead on artificial intelligence research. John Hayward, a U.S. Air Force Lieutenant General, Verilyn Jameson, Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance for the Air Staff at the Pentagon, warned last week that China is pulling ahead of the United States in artificial intelligence research. Perhaps more ominously, she said China has more concrete plans than any other adversary for actually using AI to control its population, enhance its military power, and conduct espionage against other nations. But, hey, you know what? The Shandong Paper Company is coming to Arkadelphia. And there's a great, nice little magazine, little propaganda magazine that is written and published to tell you about it. Because Arkansas is a state that's run like a business and Asa Hutchinson is the CEO. Really? Come on. Even among you establishment Republicans that think that Asa Hutchinson is a, quote, conservative, end quote. I mean, is there anybody out there that's just a little uncomfortable with using the Arkansas Economic Development Commission as a way to promote one person as being responsible? By the way, that's not even what... I don't know. I just... it's kind of... you get to a point where it's at a loss for words. So we're going to take a break. Hey, I'm going to be in Conway today at noon, and I would love to meet you. Please come out to the Faulkner County Tea Party Luncheon at Larry's Pizza. It's from noon to 1. Have some lunch. I'll be speaking. I'd love to see you there. This is Conduit News Radio. Back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
The problem of the mass Muslim migration is that among the peaceful migrants, you're going to get a certain number of jihadis. And those jihadis are going to be waging the same jihad that's been waged around the world for 1,400 years to try to bring about the conquest of Europe and its submission to Islam. The prophecy is attributed to Muhammad, the prophet of Islam himself, that the Muslims will eventually conquer Rome, and they've got a better chance to do it now than they ever have.
Yeah, it's everybody is they fail to recognize a threat, and that's certainly is unfortunate. What about the southern border? We're talking with Robert Spencer, the director of Jihad Watch. It's jihadwatch.org, and he also does have a new book out. I want you guys to check it out, The History of Jihad from Muhammad to ISIS. What about the southern border? Is there any threat? I mean, obviously we have unchecked people coming across the border there. But you've always heard these rumors.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right. This is a throwback article, excuse me, a throwback article that China has 7 new military bases in the South China Sea. The commander of the U.S. Pacific Command has warned of China's growing military might. This is back in February. China is attempting to assert de facto sovereignty over disputed maritime features by further militarizing its man-made bases. This is Admiral Harry Harris said in a congressional hearing in February. Harris told the House Armed Services Committee the 7 new facilities included aircraft hangars, barracks facilities, radar facilities, weapon emplacements, and 10,000-foot runways. China has overlapping territorial claims with Brunei, Malaysia, Philippines, Vietnam, Taiwan in the South China Sea, a strategic waterway through which over 1/3 of global trade passes. Harris said he sees Beijing's assertive territorial claims in the East and South China Seas as coordinated, methodical, and strategic, using their military and economic power to erode the free and open international order. In the East China Sea, China's government vessels have repeatedly intruded into Japanese waters around the Senkaku Islands in an attempt to undermine Japan's administration of the uninhabited islets. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that one right. That's some sort of anyway. So, just want to point all that out. Look, the photos here are astounding. They're making islands. They're making artificial islands in some cases. It is unbelievable that. Well, okay. So you know how I've been saying for a while that every now and then you see these instances where it appears that the United States government is not a monolithic government when, you used to hear people say, well, we have disagreements in politics and da-da-da-da-da, but all of that ends at the borders. All of that, of course, now the Democrats don't want any borders, but all of that ends at the shores. And when we go into diplomacy, we are united and blah, 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 blah. I don't know. Listen, the governor has said, he has claimed that Trump administration officials have told him that his deals with the Chinese do not conflict with the Make America Great Again strategy. He has said that. He's quoted as saying that in the paper, that he's been told that. I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. It's possible that Donald Trump may come out tomorrow and say that these deals are fantastic. I don't know. It's possible that we got a bunch of Chinese that are lobbying people in Washington, D.C., and so that makes it okay. Can you imagine if there was a bunch of Russians lobbying people in D.C.? Oh, well, we would have a special counsel for that, right? Of course we would. Something weird is going on here. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I'm going to find out, though. Something doesn't make sense about this, okay? In the same way that Donald Trump pointed out German hypocrisy for them inking a deal with Russians and having 60% of their natural gas supplied by Russia when Germany wants the United States via NATO to protect them from Russia. And Trump makes this point, and he made it really good and made everybody out to look like idiots, quite frankly, by pointing out this hypocrisy. In the same way, why in the world, if we're in a trade war with China, if they're stealing $600 billion a year of our intellectual property, why would we want to incentivize them to come to America? Why would we want to do that when they're stealing intellectual property? Why would we want to make communist Chinese countries rich when they come here, use our resources, and then the company sells the products back to us? Oh, because we're going to have jobs. You know what? Sounds to me like what we're really doing is we're selling away our economic freedom. If Asa Hutchinson is the CEO of Arkansas and Arkansas is a business, we're in the business of selling our freedom away to the Chinese. That's what it seems like to me. I know that's harsh, but tell me where I am wrong. Why are we doing business with China when they are a belligerent economic actor and advancing their military in the South China Sea?
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
And they've got a better chance to do it now than they ever have.
Yeah, it's everybody is just they fail to recognize a threat, and that's certainly is unfortunate. What about the southern border? We're talking with Robert Spencer, the director of Jihad Watch. It's jihadwatch.org, and he also does have a new book out. I want you guys to check it out, The History of Jihad from Muhammad to ISIS. What about the southern border? Is there any threat? I mean, obviously we have unchecked people coming across the border there, but you've always heard these rumors, if you will, and I know they're not rumors, but the left certainly calls them rumors. You found a prayer rug on the border. What can you say about that?
It's much more than that, much more. I'll tell you something. You know that ISIS is not just in Iraq and Syria. Actually, they've been mostly driven out of Iraq and Syria, and they have dispersed around the world. And one of the hotbeds of ISIS activity today is Bangladesh. And in Laredo, Texas, the police have reported about 200 Bangladeshi nationals over the last year have tried to get over across the border illegally. Now, you got to wonder, why is a guy from Bangladesh going to travel to Mexico to sneak into the United States? Probably is some of those guys, at very least, are ISIS.
Yeah, that is absolutely terrifying, frightening. It's what's worse is that we had Maria Espinoza from the Remembrance Project. She was on here yesterday, and she was talking. It's an organization that is there to remember people who have been killed by illegal immigrants through illegal immigration. And we have people in our country, as far as the southern border and that issue, they're making the economic arguments. You have elites that, they want unchecked illegal immigration. It's going to keep the wages low and everything else. But no one is really talking about the actual danger here, the violent crimes, if not the jihadists, the potential there. And it's like we want the government to reinvent or invent new responsibilities, but they're abdicating their chief responsibility, which is, if you're going down to the southern border, Robert, we've posted signs saying, maybe you don't take the southern route along the U.S. side, maybe you take the northern route because we can't guarantee your safety. I mean, that is embarrassing that we, in our own country, we can't say, you're going to be safe within the borders of this country.
That's right. And it's an abdication of responsibility, as you say, on a massive scale, that combined with the abdication of responsibility to know the enemy, which is the first step towards defeating him, that has been committed by the Obama administration and is still going on in terms of the jihad threat, it spells disaster in the future. And this has got to be changed. To his credit, the president keeps insisting.
And I really hope. So are you optimistic? Do you think that President Donald Trump, it seems like we've come a long way. I can't remember if it was John Brennan or James Clapper in congressional testimony. He was asked, I believe, about the Muslim Brotherhood or one of these radical organizations, and he was apologizing for them. He was saying that they're not terrorists. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was Clapper. Yeah.
Okay, Clapper.
He said that the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the Brotherhood of Muslims. I mean, I know it sounds absurd. I'm saying the obvious, but it's not obvious because Clapper said the Muslim Brotherhood is a largely secular organization. In reality, the Muslim Brotherhood is just what it says it is, a Muslim Brotherhood that is dedicated to implementing the Quran and the political aspects of Islam and imposing them upon societies around the world.
So are you optimistic that President Donald Trump, he's at least using the bully pulpit trying to get changes here? Do you think we're going to see any of these changes in being able to correctly identify the threats to this country?
Well, they've already revealed a national security strategy that actually mentions Sharia, Islamic law, and identifies it as something that is incompatible with constitutional principles. That's extraordinary, and I applaud the president for that because Sharia does deny the freedom of speech, the freedom of conscience, the equality of rights of women, the equality of rights of non-Muslims with Muslims. And so that needs to be recognized, and it has never been before. As a matter of fact, the Obama administration actively supported Sharia state, and it was a very welcome thing to see. But it's essentially just a statement so far. It needs to be implemented.
Robert Spencer, the director of Jihad Watch. It's jihadwatch.org, and the new book, The History of Jihad from Muhammad ISIS. Robert, I appreciate you coming on the program. It's great to meet you.
Pleasure. Thank you. Call me anytime.
All right. Yes, sir. Thank you.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Folks, it's hour number 2, and we really appreciate you being with us today. We had a great first hour. You feel free to get it over at conduitnews.com. You can go to the iTunes store. You can go to the SoundCloud app and get it there. Just search for Conduit News. We're also broadcasting right now live video over at facebook.com/Conduit News and YouTube as well. If you go to the YouTube channel, just make sure you subscribe and hit the little bell for notifications. We would appreciate that.
We really want to be discriminated against.
Yes, we want to get to the point where YouTube discriminates against us for our conservative beliefs.
Where our videos get monetized and then they get demonetized.
We want to be demonetized.
That's
we
exactly
want
what
to
we
not
want.
make money.
Yeah,
because
we want
of our
to operate at a
conservative
loss.
beliefs. Yes, exactly. Joe, I'm glad that you're here because it is time. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for the Conduit for Action weekly quiz. Corporate welfare is alive and well in Arkansas. Incentive packages from the state, county, and local level are reaching historic numbers. Generally, corporate welfare is the giving of taxpayer money to private companies or not requiring businesses to pay their full fair share of taxes owed. Corporate welfare does not work. It distorts the economy. It puts current Arkansas businesses that do pay their full fair share of taxes at a competitive disadvantage to companies who are being subsidized by the taxpayers. In effect, the Arkansas small businesses are having their tax dollars work against them. We'll be taking a quiz on this information and more today on the program. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. Joe, kind of a little bit of a recap. Last week on the Conduit for Action quiz, we did it on a Friday instead of a Thursday. Your score was, what, an 80-something?
It was like an 86.
An 86. So you did a pretty good job.
Yeah,
You
2 weeks in a row, I missed one question.
You only got one question wrong, and it had to do with the Citizens United case. What was it over the airing of? And you said it was over a movie about John McCain, and it was actually a movie that was critical of Hillary Clinton. So it was pretty good. You did a good job there. All right, so let's start with question number 1. Joe, you'll be taking the quiz. How much money did FMH Conveyors, LLC in Jonesboro, receive for, quote, infrastructure and equipment, end quote, from Governor Asa Hutchinson's Quick Action Closing Fund? Was it A, $25,000, B, $200,000, or C, $1 million? Think it out now.
I don't even know.
Well, you could go with your normal.
I could go with my normal
deductive skills, but somebody might be trying to mess with you.
I could deploy my normal strategy.
I think they now carefully craft this quiz trying to put themselves in your shoes because you're the one that takes it publicly for everybody to watch and listen to. And, unfortunately, Joe, we're going to need an answer. We're out of time. That sound means that we're out of time. So what do you think? Is it $25,000, $200,000, or $1 million? $1 million.
I'm going to go with $1 million.
Going with $1 million, going with that high figure, going with that high number strategy. I see what you're doing there. Question number 2, what was the purpose of the $275,000 that Brian E. Keith Foods in North Little Rock received from the governor's Quick Action Closing Fund? A, parking lot paving, B, training, or C, energy efficiency improvements? I don't think you're going to do very well on this one.
I don't think I am either.
This is actual.
At this point, I'm just like hoping that I get the right answer. Just
well,
randomly.
I'm curious. Okay, let's think about this. I would just maybe think about it and what would be the most outrageous. That's the only thing I can think of. Like, what would be the most
parking lot?
Because the whole.
Well, actually, no, that's the most practical.
I got a feeling that this is it's kind of about a waste of money, in a way. So what are we helping these companies do? Training, energy efficiency improvements, or parking lot paving?
See, I have a different priority on these things because the parking lot paving I don't see as a big deal because I don't want to drive around in my parking lot at work and I don't want to hit a pothole at work.
Well, I mean, you and State Representative Dan Douglas would get along well together then.
Excuse me, I need to change. I need to change from
a chug hole
to chug hole.
A chug hole. As I was staring there, I was going to the bathroom, as we all do, and I was staring at the wall, and I heard a voice beside me, and that voice said, I always like to have a attractive woman sitting beside me, just for the record. All right, so.
Whose bed have your boots been under?
Any woman that wears a mate dress, I got a lot of respect for. All right, so what do you think, Joe? Was it for parking lot paving, was it for training, or was it for energy efficiency improvements?
Oh, let's just go with parking lot paving.
All right.
I feel like that's
parking lot paving.
Because training makes sense, and then energy efficiency improvements make sense.
Yeah, I think my Dan Douglas insult did the trick. Push you over the edge to select that answer. Question 3, which company in Fort Smith received $2 million from the Governor Asa Hutchinson's Quick Action the Governor Asa Hutchinson's Quick Action Closing Fund for site preparation and construction? Was it
so want to pick FFH?
Was it FFH Construction, which that would be convicted Jake Files' seat company?
I so want to pick that.
Was it B, Central Business Improvement District of Fort Smith, or C, Arc Best Corporation? Which company in Fort Smith received $2 million from Asa Hutchinson? What do you think? Just take your time on this one.
Based off what it's saying, site prep and construction, and I don't know anything about the other two, I would pick the one that has construction in its name because Central Business Improvement District doesn't scream construction to me, which it could. I don't know. And then ArcBest, I don't even know what ArcBest is. So I'm just going to go with FFH Construction.
Okay.
Because why not?
Going with the Jake Files company, I think that's a good guess. I mean, why would anybody think, if you're just guessing on this one, there's no one that's going to say, well, that's a bad guess.
Yeah.
Question number 4. How much money did Mortis Pater Pictures receive for film production from Governor Asa Hutchinson's Quick Action Closing Fund? Was it $10,000? Was it $57,000? Or $144,000?
What did this dude produce?
I have no idea.
I want to know.
I'm going to have to Google some of this stuff, but this is fascinating. A lot of people didn't know this. This is a lot of spending from the governor.
Which is normal.
I'm sure it just gets rubber stamped by the Arkansas Legislative Council. Sure, it doesn't get the 3/4 needed in each chamber to actually appropriate and spend money. Because, of course, every Arkansan voted for Republicans because they wanted film projects to be government subsidized. That was a huge issue. Yep. It has been ever since, 2008.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go with the highest monetary value on this one. We wasted so much money on a program.
What's $144,000,
Wasn't the program that we were going to use that we didn't end up using because of whatever reason? What, like $200 million?
Software? Yeah, $200 million.
Yeah, what's $200 million compared to $144,000? Come on.
Yep. Drop of the bucket. Question number 5. Which companies have received over $2 million in Governor Asa Hutchinson's Quick Action Closing Fund? Which company or companies? Gladfelter Advanced Materials in Fort Smith, Big River Steel in Osceola or Mississippi County, Remington Arms Company in Lonoke, or all of the above?
Considering that I know that the governor likes to hunt, Remington probably got $2 million because that's.
Oh, you mean because
protect your Second Amendment rights?
But
he's got this hunting rifle
because the rights of hunting. Yeah, you see the commercials. Yeah,
I've seen the commercials.
Yeah.
And then Big River Steel.
Hunting, Second Amendment.
He's been working on Big River Steel for years. So I'm going to go with all of the above.
All of the above? Yeah.
All of the above.
Okay. Actually, these last ads were it wasn't so much about hunting. When he was running against Jan Morgan, see, when he ran the first time, his Second Amendment ads were with hunting rifles. When he ran the second time, he switched to a pistol for some reason.
And awkwardly held it. It
might have something to do with he was running against a gun range firearms instructor who just, by the way, Jan Morgan, we talked about this in the first hour, she stood up to the liberal progressives on CNN and stood up for liberty and the Bill of Rights on CNN, which is, when's the last time that's happened? You can only hope that when stuff like that happens, maybe there's somebody out there watching who gets I don't know, woken up,
Gets woke.
Yeah, from their sleepy fake news CNN binge. All right, question number 6. How much money has been spent in total from the governor's Quick Action Closing Fund since its inception in 2007? $42 million, $97 million, $176 million.
It's been 11 years since its inception. There's no way he spends less than.
Hang on, we said 11 years. I'm confused. Where'd you get that number?
How the Quick Action Closing Fund since its inception?
2007. I say. All right, you're doing math.
Years.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
There's no way he only spends like $10 million. There's no way he only spends less than $10 million a year in the Quick Action Closing Fund. So I'm going with 176.
All right,
million on this one. There's no way.
Okay, that's good. Question number 7. I'm gonna get that out of there. Question number 7. How much money did the American Taekwondo Association receive from Governor Asa Hutchinson's Quick Action Closing Fund for a new headquarters in Little Rock? $25,000, $250,000, or $950,000.
Trying to remember.
This was to build a dojo.
Yeah, I thought it was $250,000. I'm pretty sure it's $250,000 if I remember correctly.
Well,
yeah, I'm going to go with my original gut instinct.
Going with your gut. $250,000. Okay, all right. We'll see what happens there. American Taekwondo Association. Now, if you have not already subscribed to receive Conduit for Action emails, you may do so. You can also go to conduitnews.com and receive Conduit News updates. We would encourage you to do that as well. Also, put your name and town in, and then here we go.
I was not expecting to get on this one.
Joe makes.
I missed 3 questions.
Joe gets 4 out of 7 for a score of 57%.
To be honest,
he got. What is that? An F.
Oh, that's an F.
That is an F.
I'm going to be honest.
And you're so close.
I'm going to be honest. I did so much better than I thought I was going to do.
D.
When I started reading these questions.
D plus. I'm going to graduate. Not Joe. Joe got an F plus. Okay. So sorry.
It was parking lot pay. No, it was energy efficiency improvements.
Okay.
Yeah, parking
so
lots.
Let's go. The question you missed. What was the purpose of the $275,000 that Ben E. Keith Foods in North Little Rock received from Governor Asa Hutchinson's Quick Action Closing Fund?
See, energy
efficiency was what the correct answer was. You chose parking lot paving. I feel like I kind of nudged you to pick parking lot paving. That's what I would.
So what you should do is you should give me that.
Well, I'm not responsible.
Or you should give me half credit. Yeah. So if you give me half credit, then that puts
energy
me
efficiency.
That gives me a D.
I'm glad though that you were on the side of, wanting to. I'm glad that we got to do a Dan Douglas bit there. That was totally organic, by the way. You also missed question number 3.
How did I miss this one?
Now, this is totally.
Jake Files is his best friend.
This is totally reasonable that you would miss this. I would have probably picked FFH Construction. Which company in Fort Smith received $2 million from the governor's Quick Action Closing Fund for site preparation and construction? It was actually ArcBest Corporation, not FFH Construction.
I had no idea what ArcBest was.
Yeah. Scrolling down, you see question 4 you got right. It was $144,000 to subsidize a film project. It was all of the above. $2 million has gone to Glatfelter, Big River Steel, and Remington. Then we have $176 million going has been spent out of this fund since 2007. Another question you missed, though,
I
here.
really wanted to put
This is I knew you were wrong on this one because I had this figure memorized. $950,000 is the correct answer. That's how much Asa Hutchinson gave the American Taekwondo Association to build a dojo.
I wanted to pick that
so
one
that they could have conventions there and everything else.
I really wanted to pick that one, but for some reason my mind just kept going $250,000.
I mean, a lot of people don't realize this, but during elections, during campaign season. The reason he went with $950,000 instead of $250,000 is because people, when they voted for Asa, I don't know if you remember this, at the rallies, at the speeches, they were wanting karate rights. They were wanting really just martial art.
You mean
they
karate?
Wanted, yeah, they were wanting martial arts appreciation and equality, and that's what the election was about. And it's always been a big issue, and that's why the governor went ahead and fulfilled his campaign promise and gave the American Taekwondo Association $950,000. And the voters are so thrilled about this because it's a huge priority. Everybody went to the polls and voted for Republicans so that they would pick winners and losers. Specifically, they wanted martial arts equality and that sort of thing. So we're going to take a break, but if you want more information on this, always go to conduitforaction.org. Check out their amazing articles. Subscribe to their email list so you don't have to go to the website every day. You'll just get an email every time there's a new article. New article up right now, as a matter of fact. We'll get to that here in a moment. Also, coming up at the bottom of the hour, we'll be talking with Mr. David Crow from the Faulkner County Tea Party. I'm actually going to be in Faulkner County today at lunchtime. Larry's Pizza at noon in Conway for their luncheon. I'll be saying a few words. Love to meet you. Love to have you come out, eat some food with us. And you guys have anyway, we're going to go to break, and we'll be back in just a moment. How about that? The website is jihadwatch.org. And the man is Robert Spencer. He's the director of Jihad Watch. He has led seminars on Islam and jihad for the FBI, the United States Central Command, the United States Army Command, and General Staff College, the U.S. Army's Asymmetric Warfare Group, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, the Justice Department's Anti-Terrorism Advocacy Council, and the U.S. Intelligence Community. Robert Spencer joins us now. Robert, welcome to the program, sir.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Now, you're also the author of the new book, The History of Jihad, From Muhammad to ISIS. What can you tell us about that?
This is the first and only one-volume treatment in the English language of the entire history of jihad activity, violence by Muslims in order to impose Islamic law around the world, starting in the 7th century and going right up to today. Of course, this is the motivation behind the terror threat that we face around the world.
This is for all you big government establishment Republicans out there. Hope you're listening. I keep a close watch on these boats of mine. I keep my finger in the wind all the time. I vote big government, and you will pay with your dime. 'Cause every time I toe the line. You know, there's always an excuse not to shrink government. It's much easier just to toe that line. I find it very easy to be rhino blue. I find I'm not alone when failing to come through. Yes, big government, I'm a fool for you. 'Cause every time I toe that line. Legislative sleight of hand would be an accurate description. Or you could just say they can't quit towing that party line. As sure as night is dark and day is light, I'll vote big government both day and night. And act like I'm shocked when it all comes to light. 'Cause every time I toe the line. You know, the phrase toe the line is the equivalent of toe the mark, both of which mean to conform to a rule or standard. You could also call it the status quo. Tax and spend, I'm always on your side. I love writing government checks that I cannot hide. Buying people's votes always turns the tide, 'cause every time I toe the line. The Oxford Dictionary Word Histories. The idiom toe the line, from an athletics analogy, originated in the early 19th century. I hope you don't watch these votes of mine. Hope you don't see through the lies and slime. 'Cause I plan on spending with your dime. 'Cause every time I toe the line. You know, toeing the line is what the folks down in Little Rock call progress.
PHP Parody.
Talking Mr. David Crow coming up here at 7:33. Excited about that. Going to get his take on some of the issues, the news of the day, and excited about being at the Faulkner County Tea Party. Larry's Pizza, their luncheon there, very well attended. That group, very well organized, and I'm actually looking forward to. I'm looking forward to telling myself on the way down there that I'm going to eat a salad. And then betraying myself and exposing myself as a complete hypocrite who lacks discipline and eating pizza instead. That's what I'm looking forward to doing. All right, let's see here. What do we have? So I want to talk a little bit about the Tax Reform and Relief Task Force. Yeah. Tax Reform and Relief Task Force. So I'm curious. You know, do you really think that we're going to have the burden decrease, the tax burden? Is it going to be smaller on the people of Arkansas? I think that's the real question. When you boil it all down, are we going to be paying less money to the government than we're paying now? And I think if that is my marker for success, but I don't think that's the task force's marker for success. I think their marker for success is to raise taxes on this group here and lower taxes on this group here and call it a wash. And they may have arguments that say, well, it's more efficient to tax the population this way than it's to tax them this way. They may have all of those arguments. But at the end of the day, if we're still paying the same amount of money to government as we are now, it's just broken out differently. I don't think you've lowered anyone's taxes. And so I hope that they don't actually come out and say that we have cut your taxes. Now they're going to. They're going to come out and say we cut your income taxes, or this is a proposal that cuts your income taxes. But if you look at the whole package, I mean, my other fear here is, just to remind you, is that when it all comes out, we're going to be paying more to the government than we are now. That this whole thing is a shell game and a ruse to make you think that they're doing something good, cutting your taxes, or at the very least making something revenue neutral. But in the end, we end up paying more to the government than we're paying now. And what will they say if that is the case? If that is the case, Conduit News will report it to you. And once again, it'll be just like everything else. The Republican establishment will say you're not telling the truth, or they'll criticize nothing's ever good enough. You know, yesterday on the program I was encouraged when I was interviewing Mike Landry about the the Republican Party platform and it being changed back to the way it was with the principles of limited government and faith in God put back in the platform. And it really is. This platform is a reminder, and it's a mirror in and of itself, especially if you don't implement it and instead come back with excuses.
And it's what was behind 9/11, what was behind the Boston Marathon bombing, and many, many other things. And I show in the book that this is something that is a war that is 1,400 years old, is still being fought, has constantly been fought around the world. This is the first time the whole story of it has been told.
We got it up on the screen there for our online audience, the history of jihad. You can get it on Amazon right there, folks. You can see it if this is something you're interested in. Robert, it's fascinating to me, as you know. I guess I was in high school on September the 11th, 2001, and I remember that day, very vividly. But this was kind of, I never knew anything about what was going on in the Middle East. Never knew anything about it. And, it came to my country. It hit us home, and then, to see the transition from what happened in the Bush administration to the Obama administration. First of all, I just have to say it kind of shows the tolerance of this country. If you'd have told people on September 12th, 2001 that, 7 years later we're going to elect a man named Barack Hussein Obama, people would have said, no, there's no way. And yet, here we are. We did. But then they started stripping things out of the FBI in their manuals in any reference to what you call jihad. Isn't that correct?
That's right. And I show this in the book that after 9/11, Bush started it really when he went into a mosque 6 days after the attack and said that Islam was a religion of peace, while standing there with a man who is now in prison for financing Al-Qaeda and another who is the head of a Hamas and Muslim Brotherhood front. And Obama made it even worse by, as you say, he did in 2011, he forbade any mention of Islam and jihad in connection with terrorism. People find this really hard to believe, but it's 100% true. If you were to join the FBI today and go in, say you wanted to study counterterrorism, they would tell you all about so-called right-wing extremists, but they wouldn't tell you a thing about Islamic jihadis. As far as the FBI and the other intelligence agencies are concerned, there is no jihad threat, and this has not yet changed, although President Trump, of course, has been very clear that he wants it changed. It has not yet been changed in the Trump administration.
I find that very frightening that we have the civilian leader of the executive branch and these agencies that are supposed to be in the executive branch are not very responsive to the President of the United States. That's very concerning to me. Is it concerning to you?
Yes, it is. And this is really the first time this has happened in American history. I think that we all assumed that on January 20th, 2017, the new president would start implementing his program, and the people in the various government agencies would implement that program willingly. And this is the first time that we have seen what is really a large-scale revolt on the part of these agencies in refusing.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So we figured something out. What is a chug hole? I mean, I've never heard it. Okay, I've never heard what a chug hole is. You've had Dan Douglas has said before, during the last session that we've got these chug holes, but what he means is potholes on the road. And Joe, so do you have one definition?
So
I heard the first one.
I think there's two ways to take this.
Okay, what is a chug hole?
So the one that I thought it was originally was when you hit this pothole. Usually potholes mess up your car in some way. The only thing you can do in response is go, fine, and chug a beer.
That's what a chug hole is.
Okay,
it's like a drinking game.
Or what you said was when you hit the pot, like you see a pothole coming up,
you see a pothole coming,
and it's unavoidable. It's like, well, I gotta drink my beer before I spill it.
That's right. I think that's the winner. It's like, oh, there's a chug hole up there. Better drink this before I spill it. Okay, folks. On that note, let's welcome Mr. David Crow from the Faulkner County Tea Party back to the show. David, it's always great to have you on.
Hey, Paul, thank you so much on that chug hole thing. That is classic Dan Douglas. Man, that guy is he's out there. What is it? 5 votes, and we would have not had Dan Douglas back in the legislature.
Yeah, he barely won his
barely
primary.
Yeah.
And the thing is we actually may be having State Representative Dan Douglas on the program soon. Which is it's that's in the works. But to talk about an unrelated issue, I'm sure we'll get into our differences on taxes. You say one thing about Dan Douglas is that his monologues are comedy gold. I mean, as we've demonstrated, and he certainly seems like. Or he is a nice guy. It's just I disagree with the policies that he advocates. So.
Right, exactly. He seems to be a nice guy. He spoke at the FOIA committee this month, and interesting fellow.
Yeah, and that was what I was interested in having him on and talk about that FOIA situation. So, David, first of all, I'm totally excited about being in Conway today at noon at Larry's Pizza. I want to invite everybody out there to come and hear the great work that you guys are doing at the Faulkner County Tea Party. Can you tell us a little bit about what's on the agenda for today?
Well, actually, you're on the agenda. That's you're the main guy that's going to be on today. We'll have our opening. We'll have a few comments about things going on around the city, but then we'll be turning it over to Paul, and we're going to have a heavy dose of Paul Harrell.
Yeah,
I'll be taking. So looking forward to it.
I'll be taking a lot of questions, I'm sure, and that's kind of the. I mean, I've got some remarks prepared, but I've also really enjoyed just taking questions from the audience. You know, every time I talk down there, it's always a good time, and it's good to be around people who are engaged and want to really just guard the liberties. Of the people, and they recognize that government tends to grow and, drown out those liberties. And so, and I know that's what you've been fighting for a very long time. I also understand that you and your wife, Janet, recently celebrated your anniversary. I want to say congratulations. How many years was it again?
46. We had 46 years of wedding, of anniversary.
Wow.
And amazing. I mean, I everybody knows me, and Janet knows that I'm married up in a big way. And so, thank goodness for Janet. I just so love her. She's so special.
46 years. That is amazing. Congratulations on that, David. David, I wanted to know, have you been following any of this Trump tariff situation? What are your thoughts on it? Because, in conservative circles, you'll hear some people say, conservatives shouldn't support tariffs, or they shouldn't support, what the president is doing, what some people have called economic saber rattling, trying to get America a better deal. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I totally am a Trumpster. I totally back everything he's about. Trump is got an agenda, which is make America great again, and I think I follow everything he does, and I endorse literally everything. Somehow, some ways he goes about it. I wouldn't necessarily do it the same way, but let me tell you what, the guy is incredibly successful. So go ahead, raise those tariffs on China, go to 25%. Doesn't bother me at all, and I'm a happy camper that he's about doing the things he's doing, because I think his ultimate goal is to go to a level playing field. Let's erase all tariffs on both sides of the, on the agenda, and not only with the EU, but everybody. And I just think that's the best path to take and put us on a level playing field. And in each of those cases, we're going to win.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's what they're afraid of. The goal of the level playing field is certainly where we want to be. And
right.
I find it... I find it when Democrats and both Republicans are upset, it more often than not, Donald Trump's doing something right. He's doing something that
exactly
the one thing that no other Democrat or Republican has done. I mean, whether it's moving the embassy to Jerusalem like everybody said they were going to do but never did, and he did it, or whether it's these tariffs, or whether it's, when he came back from the Helsinki summit, everybody, Democrats and Republicans, were both critical of him. And it's like, okay, well, you must have done something right then, Don. Right. I mean, it's fascinating to watch. I will say that much. It's fascinating to watch him govern. And then, of course, you have the leftists in the media who are, continuing to lie to people, work people up in a frenzy. They want the ratings. They want this emotional-based coverage. And so I'm curious, though, the Koch brothers this week, they came out very critical of the president, saying that they have got to stop him from, enacting his agenda. What were your thoughts on that? Were you surprised?
Well, actually, it wasn't just this week. The Koch brothers have been about this for quite some time. I don't think that they really truly favored having Trump in the office at all. And ever since he's been there, they've been against most of what Trump is about. And that's regretful. They've literally raised billions of dollars to fight the Trump agenda. And it saddens me to see what the Koch brothers have done. I mean, it really, essentially, the Koch brothers are about, their empire, and they want to keep it the way it is. Not only do they want to avoid the tariffs, they want cheap labor coming across the border. They're against a border wall, and so the Koch brothers.
Now, do they
contrary
actually?
To what a lot of people think.
Do they actually say that? Specifically about the border, because I've read stories, but did they actually say we don't want the border wall because we want to keep wages low? I mean, are they that transparent about it, or do we have to read between the lines?
Not necessarily. We have to read between the lines. Now, Tim Phillips has come out, and he's been, he's been on all the networks, especially the Fox News network, and they've spoken out against the tariffs, but they've also implied and stated some things regarding the open border, and that they see it as a negative, most of what Trump is doing. So they're doing it sort of backdoor, which oftentimes is what their agenda and the approach that they take. They not only, they're the ones that put all the money in AFP, and AFP does a lot of their bidding for them as well. Because Tim Phillips is their president with AFP, so a lot of what the Koch brothers want to do is what AFP does on the front line with the movement. And I've seen that happen over the years, and it's very regretful what has happened with that organization.
So the border situation is one where the people of this country voted for Donald Trump, and you say what you want to about him. The one thing he was crystal clear about was he was going to build the wall. It was a huge issue. I had no idea it was as big as it was. I mean, I always lamented how violent things were down there and how we can't secure our borders and what an embarrassment it is. But throughout this week, I've been playing clips of Lou Dobbs. I remember when he had a CNN show, Lou Dobbs was talking about illegal immigration every single night, the violation of American sovereignty every single night. Now he's got a show on Fox Business, and he has brought attention to this, and the people, he had basically his thumb on the pulse of the people, and yet we now may have a situation where Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan say we're not going to fund the border wall. We're not going to give the American people the one thing that they voted for, the one thing that they wanted. And then, I interviewed this lady, Maria Espinoza, a wonderful woman, who is a director of the Remembrance Project, and she's remembering Americans whose lives have been lost because of illegal immigrants who've come to this country and have murdered people. So there is an economic argument, and there's also the safety argument, and the government needs to do its job and keep us safe from, foreign actors coming in here when we can prevent this. And that's the key is, do you believe this, David? Do you believe we can stop this? Like, we can prevent illegal immigration, or at least severely reduce it to what it is now, from what it is now?
Well, I think the latter is the case. I think you can severely reduce it. I think that the border is a must. I think what they're talking about is $24 billion, and in the scope of our budget, $24 billion is not a big number. And so, if it takes them taking part of the military budget to do that, I would suggest they do it, because you can knock it in the head quite a bit and obviously they're going to have to change the immigration rules and regs that they have. That I think that Ryan and McConnell have been an embarrassment. I think I wish both of them would go. Lord have mercy. I wish both of them would go. But I do believe that it could knock it big in the head if we put up the border wall. And now then we also have to do our part to the chain migration and a number of things that are going on there. We just have to change the laws on that.
Well,
so it's going to be a difficult battle, but it's one that I think needs to be waged.
Yeah, and you've got Senator Cotton, and you've got him, attempting to put forth that legislation to bring us towards a merit-based system of immigration. I think that's really good, really bold moves there. Let's talk about China. So I've been talking about the last couple of weeks. Donald Trump, he points out German hypocrisy, saying that you want us to protect you from Russia, yet you make Russia rich. We have China, who's a belligerent economic actor. They're expanding their military into the South China Sea. They have a giant economy. The CIA, the FBI wants to supplant. They say that they want to supplant the United States as the superpower of the world, and yet the Governor Asa Hutchinson has made trips to China and has secured these 4 companies that are coming over here to supposedly create jobs. Does that make sense? Is it hypocritical for us to be in a trade war with China and maybe even a hush-hush cold war with China, and yet we're going to make these communist Chinese companies wealthy and let them use our resources to do it?
Yeah, I tell you what, this whole thing, and I think I've listened to the whole show today and all the comments that you've made about the China influence in the Arkansas economy is it's just staggering to me to realize that we're out courting them when the head of the FBI says that China is our number one enemy, and what they're attempting to do to the United States through the tariffs, through all kinds of trade thefts, through the intellectual intelligence and knowledge that they're thieving from us. What is it Donald Trump was saying? $500 billion a year. And that's amazing that we would actually go out of our way as a state through the governor's office, want to attract the communist country, China, into our state, and then to support them through all kinds of tax benefits, sell them property and provide benefits, and also invite them to use our legislators as their legislators. It is just amazing and just a travesty to see that occurring in our state, and see that our governor is supporting that effort, and in a big way, and has made, like you said, made many trips over there, and to see that happening into the state of Arkansas. And when the entire country is growing at 4.1% on GDP, our state is flat, has a flat growth pattern, and the fact is that we have a problem with having a state that has business. The climate for business is not that good, and then for us to use citizens' taxes to attract the communist country to come bring in business here is just
frustrating.
Great deal.
Yeah, it's certainly frustrating. Here is Mike Preston. You mentioned the idea that when we had the Chinese here, we said that these are your legislators now. The director of the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, which works closely with the governor to give away this taxpayer money and to recruit these communist companies here. This is what he said at the press conference when they were welcoming Rui to the state.
Chairman Chu, Rui, welcome to Arkansas. And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you. You'll see multiple members of the state legislative assembly. They're here to support you, and specifically Senator Caldwell, Senator Ingram, Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell. These are your senators and your representatives now. You call on them, and they're going to help you. Guarantee it. And Senator English, I saw you out there too. Thank you for being here as well.
I mean, what was that? I mean, that is so offensive to me, who actually is a citizen of this state.
Right. I mean, think about it, people. They are courting the communist country China to come in and own a business here, and we're going to support them by giving them enormous amount of tax credits and giving them money, folks, that we paid into the government to bring in a communist country who is
spying on us. I mean, the FBI
destroying the United States of America.
Yeah, yeah. The FBI says that they're and the CIA that they're spying on us, like that they have investigations in all 50 states, according to reports, about their economic activities, and all roads lead to China. Then you have Tucker Carlson over at Fox News talking about how they're lobbying people in D.C. left and right like crazy. I just don't understand why. I mean, I feel like the governor needs to address this at some point. I feel like he needs to address the fact that, China is a bigger threat to us than Russia. But for some reason, because of all the hysteria with Russia, Asa had nothing but negative things to say about Donald Trump's Helsinki press conference. And yet we're doing business with the Chinese. We can't get them in here fast enough. Something doesn't add up there. There's a double standard there. It doesn't make sense.
Well, it doesn't make sense for sure, and you're going to have a press that will never ask that question of him, will not press him on that issue whatsoever, and it is as if they're complicit on it. And then you have the departments of the government down there putting out propaganda pieces like what you shared on the radio show today, promoting the CEO of the state of Arkansas that runs it like a business. There were so many things that you have to laugh at them thinking that he would. The guy's never run a business, ever. That he's possibly ever going to be able to run a business, and they're going to call it, they're claiming that he's actually run the state of Arkansas like a business. It would never happen that way. So the man is just, he's a tyrant.
Yeah, well, I know that, I disagree with his economic philosophy. I get that. If that's fine. Like, we disagree. I don't think you should take taxpayer dollars and give it to companies. Like, it's corporate welfare, whatever. I don't think it works. There's studies to back it up. We could have that argument all day long. But if you're going,
I'm with you on that. Baker's got some great information.
Exactly. But can we at least just say, okay, if we're going to do it, which all other states do this, they try to sweeten the deal or whatever. Why does it have to be China? Why China? Why not some other company? And that's the question here: is why China? Anyway,
I don't know. I don't know. I wish I had the answer, and I think that needs to be questioned, but it's apparently not going to be questioned. And the propaganda machine will kick in whenever that is questioned, because they'll revert to something else. They'll say, "Hey, we cut 100,000." Things like. When are you going to start cutting spending? Because they've increased spending like about $500 million a year ever since he's been in office.
Yeah.
And they say, "Oh, but hey, we're cutting all kinds of spending. We've cut $1,000 out of the budget."
Well,
okay, but you still increase spending by $500 million.
I will tell you this as we wrap things up, David Crow. This hypocrisy. I am not the only one. Conduit News is not the only one to have noticed this hypocrisy with China. There are people who have contacted me who are concerned. And so we're going to continue following this story and see where it gets. Good. David Crow, we got to take a break. I will see you at Larry's Pizza today in Conway for the Faulkner County Tea Party Luncheon. Thank you for inviting me to speak, and it's always a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. I'll share that salad with you today down at the pizza.
Okay, sounds good.
At the Larry's Pizza.
I'm going to have ranch, though. I am going to have some ranch dressing with it. Okay. All right. Thanks, David. I appreciate it. Bye. Folks, we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. If you're like me, You believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com.
To implement the president's program and clinging to the programs of his predecessor. And this is something that's got to stop because it's a grave threat to our entire republic, our electoral system. I mean, why even bother throwing somebody out and bringing somebody else in if the people who actually implement the policies aren't going to change anything?
That's exactly right. And we were actually talking about this last hour just on the border wall funding and how the American people voted for President Trump. One of the key things he said he was going to do was build the wall, and now we have members of the Republican Party saying they're not going to include it in the funding. So it's kind of along the same lines. It's like, okay, well, so do we not have the power of the vote, and the consent of the governed is being violated here left and right, and certainly on this concept of radical Islamic terror. Last week, or back on
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I want to thank David Crow for coming on the program. It's always great to have him on. Joe, I want to thank you for your excellent performance during the quiz. Well, you made an F, but it was entertaining. What? I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I need I need you to turn the microphone on. Thank you.
A performance suggests that it was scripted. It was not scripted.
I know it wasn't scripted. I'm just saying you performed badly, but it was entertaining. That's all I'm saying.
I performed admirably.
Folks, building on this, what happened with China and what's in the news in China, we brought you this story at 6 o'clock during the 6 o'clock hour. There's a top U.S. general that has warned that China is pulling ahead on artificial intelligence research, and it's just the opening paragraphs. This general said China has more concrete plans than any other adversary for actually using AI, artificial intelligence, to control its population, enhance its military power, and conduct espionage against other nations. Now, the question is, if you have a Chinese company that's located in Arkansas, and the Chinese government calls them up and says, hey, we need you to do X, Y, and Z for us, but keep it on the down low, is that Chinese company going to say no to the communist Chinese government? Of course they're not going to say no. And that's assuming that there wasn't a deal to begin with, that there wasn't a coordinated effort and plan to begin with. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. Tomorrow is Johnny Cash Friday. Feel free to text me your requests for Johnny Cash Friday, 870-275-9799. Arkansas, thank you so much. I'm going to be in Conway at Larry's Pizza today at 12 o'clock for the Faulkner County Tea Party Luncheon. I would love to see you there. Arkansas, be safe.